SFX, breath_in, 0. For what if the most ancient wisdom is not a collection of answers, but a method for asking? The method is Socrates' gift to modern minds, a discipline for living with questions rather than clinging to confident conclusions. He moved through the Athenian agora not to declare victory over ignorance, but to invite you into the labyrinth where beliefs are tested and meaning is born in the struggle to justify them. He did not offer a creed, he offered a practice. The unexamined life, he said, is not worth living. The line has traveled through centuries, sometimes reduced to a bumper sticker, sometimes revered as a stern command. But consider what it means if we read it as a medicine for certainty. A daily dose of humility that keeps your mind elastic as the world changes around you. If your habits, your routines, your assumptions survive without a second look. You may be living with a map that no longer matches the territory. I know that I know nothing. The sentence is a paradox carved into plain speech. It is not self-denial, but a readiness to undergo revision. It is the posture of someone who has learned that conviction is a fragile vessel, easily cracked by new information or a stubborn counterexample. When you accept that you don't possess the final verdict, you free yourself to gather more pieces of the puzzle, to test each piece against life's stubborn data, and to let truth emerge, not from victory over others, but from refinement of your own understanding. Wisdom begins in wonder. The spark that drives inquiry is not doubt for its own sake, but enlivened by curiosity. Wonder invites humility, the sense that the world remains more strange than any single answer can capture. This is where philosophy becomes not a dusty library habit, but a practical life skill. To stay curious enough to notice the edges of your own certainty, to probe the reasons behind your beliefs, and to accept that the edges may shift as light shifts through a prism. But there is a tension at the heart of Socratic inquiry. Asking questions can feel destabilizing. It can erode the comfort of familiar stories and leave you exposed to counterclaims, pain, and ambiguity. The temptation is to retreat into certainty again, to build a new fortress of good arguments that shield you from doubt. The genius of Socrates is that he never pretended the journey would be painless. He showed that the pain of uncertainty can be transformative if you use it to examine your life with integrity and care. Consider a modern interview a forum, a debate, a forum of ideas where big claims collide with tough counterexamples. The quick-fire format pushes you towards slogans. The Socratic Method slows you down, forcing you to articulate your reasons, to confront the hidden assumptions behind your preferences, to test them against the consequences they would produce in real life. In that slow, stubborn process, your beliefs are not just tested, they are clarified. The clarity, not the certainty, becomes the value you carry forward. Let us move from quotes to living practice. The unexamined life begs for periodic audits. A weekly hour to map what you believed a year ago against what you do today. The commitment to truth requires an ethics of attention. Listening to evidence that contradicts you, recognizing the human beings behind opposing views, and choosing the path that aligns your actions with a broader sense of what is right in the world you inhabit. This is the Socratic project as it meets the pressures of a 21st century life where information travels at the speed of a notification, and character is proved not in a moment of certainty, but in the quiet minutes of choosing what to verify. The quotes, then, are not slogans to memorize, but mirrors to consult. When you read, question, or hear them, you should feel a small tremor, the sense that your mental map, your values, contain questions you have not yet asked. The tremor is not a threat. It is a promise that intelligence is not a finite stockpile, but a practice you carry forward, one conversation, one reflection, one choice at a time. There's also a personal dimension to Socrates' best lines. They are invitations to choose courage in the face of inconvenience, to admit you were wrong, to revise your plan, to risk appearing unsure in order to pursue a greater alignment with the truth. That is not a sterile philosophy class. It is a way of life that honors complexity and resists the seduction of easy answers. If you can tolerate the discomfort that comes with real inquiry, you will discover a durable resilience, the kind that survives misinformation and the daily squeeze of competing loyalties. So what can you do this week to turn these ideas into something more than a quote on a screen? Start with a single question that unsettles you. What belief would most refine your life if you tested it against an inconvenient counter? Then seek out a counterexample with the same seriousness you would bring to a medical diagnosis. Read, listen, debate, not to win, but to illuminate the blind spots you carry. When you test your beliefs this way, you do not become less human. You become more responsive to the universe's stubborn truth. If you take this seriously, these lines become less about an ancient code and more about a humane discipline. They're not relics carved in marble, but living instruments you can use in daily conversations, in business decisions, in family life. In moments of frustration, when a simple answer would be easiest, the Socratic habit is to slow down enough to see a wider view, to listen long enough to hear the other side, and to act in a way that aligns your stated beliefs with your hidden ones. In the stillness after a good question, you may feel the door opening to a more dynamic sense of self. You will not fix your ego by closing it, but by refining it, by allowing your self-image to gain strength from honest self-critique rather than from defending a pre-existing narrative. The best quotes become a gentle discipline, a daily invitation to become more precise in thought and more generous in speech. They remind us that there's a difference between knowing something and living it, a difference that only practice can bridge. SFX, soft_bell, 0. 5. So I leave you with the image Socrates would recognize, a mind leaning into light, a heart learning to endure ambiguity, a will choosing curiosity over certainty again and again. The road is not glamorous. It is steady, often modest, and deeply human. If you walk it, you'll find that the best quotes you carry are not about victory over others, but about becoming the kind of person who can bear being unfinished, who can welcome revision, and who can still speak truth with gentleness when the world demands bravado. 3% of Socrates' influence lives in a single sentence. The rest lives in the practice of asking. When you hear, "The unexamined life is not worth living," imagine doors labeled, "I know this because." The map shows you where you tend to skip questions and pretend your compass is steady. The antidote is to turn examination into a habit, a small ritual that you perform before taking a stand. SFX, breath_in, 0. 3. First quote to carry through a week. The only true wisdom is in knowing you know nothing. It is not surrender, but ballast. It keeps your ego from paddling you into dangerous rapids of certainty. When a claim seems airtight, pause. Name what you do not yet grasp. Invite a counterexample to your favorite theory, as you would invite a stranger to tea, with curiosity rather than defense. Second quote, know thyself. The ancient directive is not vanity, but a boundary for responsibility. If you do not know the shape of your motives, you will project it onto others and call it virtue. The practice is to chart your inner weather. What drives you when you're tired, hungry, or angry? When you can name the weather, you can choose a response that fits the moment, not the reflex you learned in childhood. Third quote, wonder is the beginning of wisdom. Wonder is not idle curiosity. It is a posture that refuses to settle for easy maps. It asks, what would happen if I looked here with fresh eyes? What if a standard answer is just a partial view? This is how you expand your circle of attention. How you become the kind of person who can learn from a mistake instead of blaming the world. Let us insert a twist. Socrates did not leave us neat conclusions, but a method that The method is a rope ladder hung over a pit of certainty. You climb with questions, not with slogans. Each rung is a counterexample, a moment when your favorite story refuses to cover the whole truth. And every rung teaches you something about your own limits, not to shame you, but to free you. SFX, heart_beat, 0. 9 inches modern life. The best use of a sentence is to anchor conversations, not to end them. You can still disagree, still feel the heat of conflict, but you do so with a map intact. You can admit ignorance, you can adjust your beliefs. You can speak with a gentleness that matches your seriousness. To live by Socrates is to commit to ongoing revision, to stay awake as the city changes, to test your choices in the quiet moments after the crowd has moved on. The quotes are not instruction manuals, they are sparring partners, reminding you that truth is a shared effort, a language you co-create with those who challenge you. SFX, _clink, 0. 7. If you keep one practice this week, let it be this. After any important decision, write down one assumption you made that day, and one counterexample you should take seriously tomorrow. The act itself changes your mind before the verdict does. And so the best quotes become not banners, but compasses. They point toward a life of disciplined curiosity, where being wrong is merely a step toward being more accurate. They teach you to walk with others through uncertainty, to listen for the quiet note of integrity beneath the accusation, to choose clarity when the room wants drama. End this continuation with a gentle invitation. Try carrying one line like a talisman, returning to it when the calendar grows loud. Let the questions guide you back to your center, where wisdom waits not in certainty, but in the patient art of asking well. SFX, soft_bell, 0. 5. Let the next week be a test of your own questions. A single dialogue with a friend. A stubborn counterexample you pursue. A moment of restraint before a harsh verdict. If you do, you will discover that Socrates' best quotes are not relics of classroom, but seeds you plant in your daily life. They grow as you tend them with patience, humility, and the stubborn courage to stay in the inquiry. Now, as you walk into the day, ask not what the world can give you, but what your questions can give back to the world. That is the living inheritance of Socrates, a method for living that remains relevant not because it answers every riddle, but because it trains you to face each riddle with integrity, curiosity, and grace. And let honesty